Okay, what we're going to do here is look a little bit more in depth with Marbury versus Madison, 1803. If there's anything you can remember about Marbury versus Madison, 1803, it's two words: judicial review. Judicial review, these two words right here. So let's take a look at what this means exactly. It is the power of the Supreme Court to judge whether an official act or a piece of legislation violates the Constitution or other basic principles of justice. So put that to memory, write this down, understand Marbury versus Madison, judicial review. Basically, the Supreme Court's power to look over legislation that has been passed by the Congress and signed into law by the executive to either affirm it or throw it out. So the first thing we want to do in understanding Marbury versus Madison, 1803, is a little bit of background and looking at the election of 1800, Adams versus Jefferson, Jefferson versus Adams here. So keeping in mind, Adams is a Federalist, right? And he loses the election, so he panics. What am I going to do? Right? I believe in Federalist principles and a strong national government, federal government supremacy over the states. How can I maintain the legacy of the Federalist Party now that Thomas Jefferson, Democratic Republican, is going to step into the House? And so he understood that the legacy of the Federalist Party could endure with judges. So Adams appoints his so-called midnight appointments. He appoints a slew of judges, and they are confirmed by the Senate. They're appointed by the president. They're confirmed by the Senate, but the writs are not delivered. The commissions are not delivered. And on March 5th, 1801, when Thomas Jefferson is president, he orders James Madison not to deliver them. And so this guy right here, William Marbury, gets quite upset. Let me bring up his picture right here. This guy right here, he gets quite upset. He was one of the judges that was appointed by Adams, and he's not going to get his job. And so he wants a job. It's a good job to have. So he files a writ of mandamus, which basically says, why aren't you following the law, Jefferson? And is eventually able to take the Jefferson court administration to the Supreme Court. So Chief Justice Marshall answers three basic questions dealing with this case. One, Chief Justice Marshall is going to answer these three questions. So one, did Marbury have a right to the writ for which he petitioned? Two, did the laws of the United States allow the courts to grant Marbury such a writ? And could the Supreme Court issue such a writ is the final question. So finally we get to his ruling, John Marshall's ruling. John Marshall rules, answering those three questions, basically, Marshall ruled that Marbury had been properly appointed in accordance with procedures. That is, he was appointed by the President, John Adams, and the Senate confirmed his appointment. So he basically had legal right to that writ. Because Marbury had a legal right to his commission, the law must afford him a remedy. Basically, he's basically saying, Jefferson, you should do the right thing here and give Marbury his job. Right? Jefferson's not going to do that, though, because, well, it's politics. Third, and this is where this court case gets its significance. Right? John Marshall ruled that the court could not grant the writ because Section 13 of the Judiciary Act of 1789, which granted it the right to do so, was unconstitutional. Okay, so what's going on here is that in the original Judiciary Act, the Supreme Court had the authority to deliver these writs of appointments. John Marshall, what he does very cleverly here, he says, okay, if Jefferson's not going to do the right thing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at a law that was passed by Congress, and I'm going to establish judicial review here. And in doing so, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take part of the law out that should not be afforded to the court. So this is really interesting because on the surface of it, it looks like he's taking power away from the court. But if we dig a little bit deeper, what he's doing here is he's saying that, no, the court has a supremacy, the final say in some cases, to look at laws and to see if they are constitutional or not. Now, this is what's called setting precedent. Jefferson could have said, no, 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 Chief Justice, you do have that power. That was passed by Congress. It was signed into law by the president. And so you do have the authority to deliver the writ. But Jefferson's not going to do that, right? Because he doesn't want this guy right here to be in the courts, right? And so he's going to let this stand here. And so Marbury is not going to get his job. But what John Marshall is going to do here is he is going to give power to the Supreme Court and ultimately power to the federal government, because the Supreme Court is going to be able to, in future rulings, enforce these laws that are passed by the federal government over the states because of the precedent set here with judicial review. If you have any questions or concerns about this case.